It's Thursday's Cluster Fun. Danny Cunningham, Matthew Coller with you today. Going to talk some Vikings OTAs. Is obviously, Matthew, you were there yesterday. Kyle Rudolph in the news once again, as always. Is he going to be here? We don't know yet. What were your main takeaways from yesterday's organized team activity?
Well, let me talk about Kyle Rudolph first.
Please.
It seems that Rudolph is getting more and more irritated with questions about his future, and I totally understand that. At the same time, the subtle sniping is becoming not as subtle between the Vikings and Kyle Rudolph, and him mentioning yesterday that there are other teams interested in his services was pretty interesting. And the fact that the Vikings, I'm going to assume that the Vikings put it out there that they had offered him a contract extension, then he confirmed that they offered him a contract extension yesterday and that he turned it down. And I would suspect that contract extension would include maybe less money this year or lowering his cap hit this year, and then allowing the Vikings to get out of that deal after 2 or 3 years. And if you're Kyle Rudolph and if you're looking for your last contract, pretty much, I mean, if you're 30 years old, unless you're playing to 38 or 39 like Antonio Gates, this is probably going to be your last contract. You're looking for as much guarantees as you could possibly get, because the NFL, nothing is guaranteed from year to year with the injuries that happen. So even though he's been very durable, he would be thinking, I've got to get as much as I possibly can. And the Vikings are thinking, we've got to be savvy about our salary cap going forward, because the cap hits of Anthony Barr, of Adam Thielen, they go up after this year, and they've got to worry about what their cap situation is going to be next year. So that thing between Rudolph and the Vikings is still bubbling out there, and how it's going to turn out, I'm not really sure. But one thing that we know is they still have to create more cap space, because right now they only take the top 51 players to make up your cap. But once the season actually begins, then the practice squad players count, anyone on IR counts, and you usually need $3-4 more million if you're going to be able to get under the salary cap. So how are they going to do that? Rudolph, cutting him, trading him, these things make sense, but you also don't want to get rid of a Pro Bowl player.
Yeah, and there are probably a couple of different outcomes that are possible here with this situation, where you could cut him, you could trade him. I don't know how much sense that makes. Trying to rework his deal makes some more sense. What do you think the most likely outcome is to kind of finish this situation? Because something has to happen at some point.
Yeah, what's kind of interesting is that it wouldn't be all that hard to convert his base salary to signing bonus and create $5 million. You could do that in a snap. So it's very clear that Kyle Rudolph is playing hardball with the Vikings for a new contract, which is interesting because we haven't really seen anybody do this. Anthony Barr didn't re-sign last year, but there wasn't a whole lot of tension. It almost felt at that time like it was a foregone conclusion he was playing his last year. And as a younger guy who was on his first contract, it would make sense for him to hit the market, go somewhere else, get a big deal.
Sure.
Ultimately, he comes back. But there didn't feel like a lot of tension between Barr and the team last year. And already there definitely feels that here. So as far as a resolution, I don't know which way this is going to go. It does not make a whole lot of sense to cut a player who has been so reliable and solid, and people obsess over he's not fast enough or whatever else, he doesn't block well enough. Look, he's in the top 10 consistently in catches for tight ends. His career quarterback rating when targeted is 109. So
pretty
quarterbacks,
good.
A bunch of different quarterbacks have had success throwing to Kyle Rudolph. So I don't know which way it ultimately turns out, but our own Darren Wolfson from downstairs in the Scoop podcast reported that if the Vikings got a third-round pick offered to them, that they would probably take that. And I think you're just getting yourself into dangerous territory if you move him, and that they should probably try to find other base salaries to transfer into signing bonuses to create a little cap space, because I don't think you want to lose that player.
That's a totally fair thing. But if you continue to transfer base salaries into signing bonuses, how does that affect the cap moving forward? Because isn't that something that they're already a team that's really hamstrung right now?
Yep.
They've got some other figures that are going to increase for next year, and it's not going to get much easier. But doesn't that make it even tougher if you continue to push that kind of money and try and rearrange it that way?
Absolutely. When you push it down the road, then you're talking about bigger and bigger and bigger salary cap hits in the years after. Now, what you can often do is you could set up someone's contract so you push the money down the road, but you're never going to get to down the road. You plan on cutting that player before that. The Vikings are really brilliant in the way they've set up contracts. Rob Brzezinski, their cap guy, is one of the MVPs of the team every year they get out there because he's done an incredible job. I'll give you an example. Riley Reif has a huge contract, a starting left tackle contract. But after June 1st, they could cut him and make a bunch of salary cap space and not really have any dead money. And after next year, they could definitely do that. The same with Linval Joseph. Xavier Rhodes, I believe 2 years from now, you can get out from under. So they've designed every contract to be a short-term deal, even though when you see it in the media, it's, 5-year contract, but they set it up so it's almost never that way. That being said, he's clever, but he's not a wizard. He can't make the salary cap poof and disappear.
Does not have a magic wand, I've heard.
And these are the problems that it creates when you sign a quarterback to a contract like Kirk Cousins. You get in these tough spots. And with the Kyle Rudolph thing, the best option is probably just to let him play out this final year of his deal and then let him go on free agency and you make $7 million of cap space that way. But I keep going through the scenario. What if he says he's going to hold out? If he says, sign me to a long-term deal, or I'm holding out, or trade me, and no one is willing to give the Vikings a third-round pick, I mean, would they be willing to give away Kyle Rudolph for a fifth-round pick to New England or something like that? I mean, that would be really hard to stomach if you're anyone on that offense.
Yeah.
Like, you guys couldn't figure this out, so now we lost our Pro Bowl tight end?
That'd be a tough thing to swallow, but now I want to move to everyone's favorite thing to talk about with the Vikings, and that's the offensive line. Because that's all we do here is we just talk offensive line. That's why Matthew's here. He's just the offensive line expert.
Hand placement, thumbs up.
Yes, especially when pads are not involved. It's super easy to tell how good they were.
Wide base.
Yes, just all of those things. How did they look yesterday? How was Garrett Bradbury at center? What's the new alignment of the offensive line looking like? And how does everyone that's involved in that feel about it?
Well, I'll cop out because it's really hard to tell how someone looked at center at OTA practice in shorts. But
without shoulder pads, too.
But I can't fast forward to when the pads start popping. So I will just say the fact that he was taking all the first-team reps at center makes it pretty clear what the alignment's going to be. It's exactly what we thought. It's going to be Brian O'Neill at right tackle. It will be Josh Klein at right guard. Mm-hmm. At center is Garrett Bradbury. Then left guard Pat Elflein and left tackle Riley Reif. And I had a conversation with Pat Elflein about playing left guard. And, this might be, in a way, a blessing for him because you go back to his Pro Football Focus grades in college, he was actually better at guard than he was at center.
Okay.
And it's a natural position for him. He played 2 years at Ohio State as a guard. So this isn't like a huge hit for him. I mean, that was kind of the angle that some reporters, I think, were going for was, but like, what was your real reaction to getting Garrett Bradbury? It's like, well, this guy's played guard. I mean, it's not like this is his first time ever moving over there and it's some sort of sign of disrespect. He's probably better fit for guard than Garrett Bradbury is, and Bradbury is a better center. So, their offensive line got better in two ways because now it's Pat Elflein replacing Tom Compton, and there's a huge talent gap between Pat Elflein and Tom Compton.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of a positive domino effect for the Vikings on their offensive line. And where it's really interesting is the depth, that they have much better depth this year because they drafted Drew Samia, and then you have a bunch of guys who are kind of fighting for spots there, but they brought back Brett Jones. So you feel a little more on solid ground at the interior positions than they did last year.
Very fair. All right, let's flip over to the Minnesota Lynx. They open up their season Saturday. I know you're super excited about that. You're the most knowledgeable person I know in terms of Lynx basketball. So what are you looking for Saturday? What's got you most excited for this season?
Well, I mean, the starting lineup, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about that. When was the last time that we wondered who was going to be in the starting lineup for the Minnesota Lynx? For the longest time, it was Lindsey Whalen and Maya Moore, Simone Augustus, Sylvia Fowles, and Rebecca Brunson, just like that.
Yeah.
But now, I'm not sure. They trade for Odyssey Sims. They trade for Lexi Brown, who's going to be on my show today at 3:30. Check it out.
It's Score North Live.
Score North Live. So, but, they trade for Lexi. They trade for Odyssey. And they draft Nafisa Collier. Like, you've got all these young pieces now in place. How are you going to put them in? How are you going to put them into a rotation? Is it going to change throughout the season? Because two of their players who are, I would say, core bench players are working with their national teams to start the season and won't be with the Lynx, this opens up the door for plenty of opportunities for young players to earn time. So, I mean, I think I'm most excited about seeing Odyssey Sims here. She was a player that Lynx fans would know had a beef all the time with the Lynx.
Yeah,
I mean, you play in back-to-back championships, and there's going to be some fire that goes on between them. But
might be a little bit of bad blood, no matter what sport you're in.
Of course. But I love her aggressiveness, the fact that she could score any place on the floor, and she's a great competitor. So adding her to the mix, I think, was a big bonus for the Lynx, and they gave away almost nothing to get her. Cheryl Reeve, I think, did a spectacular job this offseason as a general manager. So seeing this new team gel with kind of the next generation of Lynx players here is going to be really something.
I think it's something I'm certainly excited for. This is the first time I've lived in a city that has the WNBA, so I'm genuinely really excited to be able to check out the Lynx and see where this season goes. Even if they might not be as good as they once were, I'm still excited for the potential that this team has.
I think the most interesting part about it is just how they're going to play, because they went from having a bunch of veteran players and playing a slowed down style that was often get Maya Moore one-on-one with somebody and drive to the basket or shoot from outside for Maya and then get it down to Sylvia Fowles. But now with all these younger athletes who could play up-tempo, we might see the Lynx become one of the higher scoring teams in the league.
And everyone loves offense, don't we? And then flipping over to the NBA side, the All-NBA teams come out today, and it is an incredibly impactful thing that's going to be announced later today involving Karl-Anthony Towns. There's a chance he makes third-team All-NBA. There's a chance Rudy Gobert makes third-team All-NBA at that center spot. This affects Karl's contract, and I'm curious to see if it's a good thing if he doesn't make it, because he would be making a lot less money. If he makes All-NBA, his contract over the next 5 years is worth $190 million. If he doesn't, it's $158 million. So we're talking
tough break if he doesn't.
Is
he going to be okay?
It is $32 million though. It's not as if that's not a lot of money. I realize.
What happens to that money? Can I have it?
No, but the Wolves could spend it elsewhere potentially.
Oh, okay.
That's the difference. The difference in Karl making All-NBA versus not making All-NBA could be them re-signing Tyus Jones or not re-signing Tyus Jones.
What would be the equivalent for us? Like losing $5,000 or something?
I'd be pretty upset if I lost $5,000.
Yeah, no, me too.
I could not afford to lose $5,000 now.
If he doesn't make the All-NBA team, that's a tough day for him, even though he's going to be fine and he, I guess won't be able to buy that third helicopter. But
and maybe maybe just the first two won't be quite as nice of helicopters.
Yeah, that's right. He'll have to get the second tier helicopter. Yeah. Rudy Gobert's team won and got themselves in the playoffs, and that's the difference for me. That even though Karl-Anthony Towns had a phenomenal season overall, he put up big stats. Winning is a big deal when I think about awards in the NBA, because there's only 5 of you out there, and the amount of impact that each star player makes on their team when you don't win, even if it was mitigating circumstances in a lot of different ways for Karl-Anthony Towns. If you're talking about tie goes to the runner in baseball, tie goes to the winner in basketball. And between those two,
that's a fair way to think about it.
As good as Karl is on offense, Rudy Gobert is on defense.
Yeah.
He's one of the most dominant defensive players in the league, and I think that's just as valuable. I would lean toward Gobert for that reason, not because I just would love to see them have more cap space for Gerson Rosas to work with, but I think that one thing that is cool, though, is if Karl-Anthony Towns is third team or fringe third team All-NBA, we've had a return of big men. It's not quite the same as it used to be, where it was dump it down to Shaq in the post or dump it down to Hakeem in the post, but I think we have a new era like that, where 10 years from now we're looking back at all these bigs and saying, yeah, that was a great era for power forwards and centers in the NBA.
Well, and truthfully, the only reason Karl is in consideration for this third team spot is because of the Anthony Davis situation in New Orleans, where Davis only played 20 minutes a game for the last 40-something games, because Joel Embiid's a lock, Nikola Jokic is a lock, and Anthony Davis is probably better than both of them. But because he didn't play, no one voted for him. That's the only reason that it's down to Karl and Gobert for that third spot, is because the guy that would have been there didn't play.
Let me ask you this. Would you rather have going forward? Now, I think as far as this year, I would just lean Gobert. Would you rather have Gobert or Karl going forward?
I would rather have Karl. I think what Karl can do offensively trumps what Gobert does defensively, and especially in this offensive era of the NBA. And I do think that Karl absolutely made strides on the defensive end. Now, he'll never be as good of a defender and a rim protector as Rudy Gobert is. Like, he is the best in the game. Karl won't get to that level, but I think just how much better he is offensively will outweigh what Rudy can give you defensively throughout the course of their careers.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and Karl can still get better defensively.
And to his credit, he did this year. It's not as if he was a turnstile defensively that couldn't figure out. He got better and made significant strides at that end, but Rudy Gobert is just so much better than him there, and it's really something that's not close and probably never will be.
I really do want to see how they use Karl-Anthony Towns, how Ryan Saunders, when he's dialing up his own offense, uses him, because last year there were some fun times with him being isolated and doing step backs and not just being sort of a traditional big, but really fully stretching the floor over the last 2 years, but shooting even more threes last season. I mean, could they design an offense where it would be almost Harden-like, where he's got the ball all the time and everybody else is just working around him? You know, could they do some things like Joel Embiid does, where he's pump faking and driving? Karl's really good at it, but doing
I
it
don't
more
think
often.
Karl's pump fake can ever be as bad as Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a worse
People
pump
still
fake.
go for
it's
it.
unbelievable.
They
I don't
still
think
go
there's a
for it.
worse pump fake in the NBA than Joel Embiid, but it works.
For some reason, they still go for it. But clearing out everybody, having him drive from up top, you know, he's such an incredibly talented player that it's almost like a blank canvas for Ryan Saunders. And even though he's been extremely, extremely good, Karl-Anthony Towns, I think there's still room to make him one of the elite scorers in the NBA.
We'll be finding out this afternoon what Karl's future salary is and the rest of the All-NBA players. That's Matthew Coller. Catch him on Score North Live this afternoon from 2 to 4. Also on Purple Daily today, I believe, from noon to 1.
Correct.
On Score North 1500. I'm Danny Cunningham. Phil Mackey filling in for me tomorrow. Talk to you then.